My name is Mike, and for the most part, I've had a fantastic life. I'm 38, and I reside in lovely house and hold a tiny stake of A. I am a junior in the construction business, partner, and while I'm not wealthy, I'm doing well enough to provide my wife Sarah and me. Sarah and I have lived a comfortable lifestyle. After 8 years of marriage, we still do not have kids, but we've established a life together that I believed was solid. She's always. Sarah has been at the center of my world. She's always had big dreams and loves literature, reading, collecting, and even writing the occasional short fiction. Over the years, she has frequently discussed combining her passion for books with her love of delicious coffee and luscious sweets. She dreamed of starting a themed cafe, a comfortable area where people can come, read, drink coffee or tea, and indulge in some. Enjoy delectable pastries while connecting with others who share their enthusiasm for. A year ago, we created that dream. Come true, Sarah discovered the perfect, located in an upmarket neighborhood of the city. Neighborhood's a charming corner property with large windows and soft lighting. Was ideal for the kind of book. She had always assumed the rent wasn't cheap and renovations required a. Sarah was worried about making a large investment. I told her not to worry about the prices. Worried, I reached into my funds and take out a little loan to help her get started. When Chapters and Cream launched, it was everything she had dreamed about. The walls were lined with bookcases. The air was suffused with the smell of fresh coffee, buttery croissants, and the cafe immediately became a hit among the. Sarah smiled in front of the neighborhood crowd. She welcomed customers and chatted with them. Asking them about their favorite novels inspired me. I felt like I had accomplished something worthwhile. I felt happy to have supported her dreams. Give her something she can call her own. But lately something has been amiss. Initially, Sarah appeared subtle. She was preoccupied even when we were alone. Began staying late at the cafe more, frequently claiming there was always something. I didn't mind. I understood how. A lot of effort went into running a tiny business, especially throughout the first year. However, her behavior began to change. I couldn't ignore that she was less. She is affectionate, but sometimes distant. I began paying closer attention to her appearance with dresses I hadn't seen, spending more time with her over the years than usual in front of the mirror earlier. Heading out, I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was simply feeling the pressure of running the cafe. Perhaps she was trying to leave a positive impression on her new customers. But as the weeks passed, I couldn't shake the sensation that something deeper was going on. My senses warned me that my wife, partner, the woman whose dream I had helped bring into life, was concealing. It was Thursday evening when Sarah came in the door with a. I was holding a bouquet of vivid yellow flowers. I'm sitting in the living room nursing cup of coffee, attempting to catch up with the game I'd missed last weekend. The flowers. You quickly captured my attention. I bought flowers and was surprised by it. It wasn't like Sarah to do that out of the blue. She grinned softly with her cheeks blushed. They are not from me, she said. Placed the bouquet on the countertop. Counter there from a client, a regular. At the coffee house, his name is Ethan. He brought. They came in today and said he wanted to thank me for the last recommendation I gave him. This week my stomach has. I requested to keep the tightened recommendation. My voice was as casual as I could manage. Yeah, about a book he really enjoys. Historical fiction, and I suggested this. A lesser-known gem about the Civil War. Apparently, they adored it and thought that flowers would be a wonderful gesture, she stated. It was as if nothing had happened, except for something about her. Ethan's smile lingered and made me apprehensive. Stated slowly, as if testing the name. You mentioned him before. Sarah nodded, still arranging flowers in a vase. He has been coming in on a regular basis. He's been doing well for a few months now. One of those people you can't help but Notice very charismatic always has. Interesting things to say, he's read so many books it's intriguing. She paused staring, pondering, and I felt the first pangs of something I hadn't experienced in years. Envy. My wife was talking about this man with a gleam in her eyes, a type of I had not seen such enthusiasm in a long time. Not even when we discussed the cafe. Her main passion is charming, yes, I remarked, forcing a chuckle. What does he do? Oh, HEK, a lawyer, she remarked, as if explained everything. Yet he has this. There is another aspect to him. He is an amateur. Historian, loves to travel. You'd enjoy him. Mike, I would like the way she phrased it. He made me feel much worse. She didn't notice my expression until she turned around holding the increasingly filled vase. The beautiful yellow blooms. Her face sank slightly as she caught my glance. You're tense, she replied, coming closer. Mike, you're not upset about the flowers, are you? They're only a friendly gesture. The chats are about books and whatnot. Like that. Nothing else. Her tone was soothing, but I could notice the flicker of something more in her gaze. Nervousness, guilt. She placed her hand on my shoulder, giving it a squeeze. I guarantee there is nothing to worry about. Forced to smile. No, it's fine, I fib. Trust you. She gently kissed me on the cheeky and changed the subject, but the thoughts remained solidly on Ethan over the. In the following weeks, Sarah's schedule grew increasingly unpredictable, and the late nights at the cafe began to extend even later, and her reasons seemed feeble. There was an issue with the coffee machine. One of the employees needed assistance. I lost track of time while talking. For a customer, each explanation was reasonable enough, but combined it developed a pattern that I couldn't ignore. She changed her behavior. She appeared more distracted at home with her phone, always within reach, often lighting up with notifications. She did not bother to explain. I never pried. I didn't want to appear ridiculous, but it was eating me up. On one night, she arrived home far past midnight. Her excuse was vague, something about inventory running late. I nodded. I kept my face neutral, but my heart was pounding. I couldn't shake the sense that she wasn't being honest. The more I replayed her words in my memory, the more I was certain that Sarah was hiding something. I decided I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just sit there with my marrying the life we'd made together. It began to feel like a lie. I needed answers. I wanted the truth before you find out what happens next. Please subscribe to the channel. I'd never believed I'd be the kind of husband who'd consider hiring a private investigator to follow his wife, but then again, I imagined I'd feel like a stranger in. Sarah was skeptical about her own marriage, uttered and analyzed every late night excuse, but my intuition told me something was wrong, and I couldn't shake the rising sense of anxiety yet. Initially, I tried to handle it myself. I considered following Sarah afterward, work or staking out the cafe, but life, my construction business, had other plans, had scooped up many new contracts. As a junior partner, I couldn't afford to slack off from the long hours and constant. The demands left me with little time to play. Detective frustrated, I realized I needed someone who could do the job for me, someone professional. After a bit searching online, I discovered an investigator named Greg Parson. His website wasn't fancy, but it had solid reviews, discretion, and professionalism. The testimonials show the results. I promised I would call him the next morning and organized a meeting at Greg's office, tucked away in a nondescript building. Downtown, the man was in his mid-40s, sharp eyes, and calm demeanor that put me at ease immediately. He wore a simple gray suit, the kind that didn't stand out but spoke of quiet confidence, so he said, leaning back in his chair after I'd explained the situation. You're not sure if your wife is cheating, but her behavior has changed, and it's raising red flags. Exactly, I replied. I don't want to accuse her of anything without proof, but I also can't keep living like this, feeling like something's going on and not knowing what it is. Greg nodded. This isn't unusual, Mike. Most of my clients come to me with similar concerns. Sometimes it's just a misunderstanding, and sometimes he paused, giving me a measured look. Sometimes it's not either way will get you the answers you need. We discussed the details, her schedule, the cafe, and the name Ethan, which he jotted down in a small notebook. Greg explained his process: discreet surveillance, gathering information, and keeping me updated without raising suspicions. You'll need to be patient, he said as I stood to leave. These things take time, but I'll find out what's going on. I shook his hand, feeling a mix of apprehension and relief. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a plan. The following month was one of the longest of my life. I buried myself in work, trying not to dwell on what Greg might be uncovering. Every time Sarah came home late or seemed distracted, I reminded myself to wait. Greg would sort it out. Then, about 3 weeks, and Sarah came home unusually excited. You'll never believe what happened today, she said, practically bursting through the door. What's up? I asked, setting my coffee cup down and bracing myself for whatever she had to share. I lost my phone this morning, she began, her words tumbling out. I think it slipped out of my bag when I was getting groceries. I didn't even realize it was missing until someone called the cafe saying they'd found it. Can you believe that this kind person tracked me down and returned it? That's lucky, I said, masking my surprise. I no, I thought I'd have to get a new phone, but this guy, he didn't even want a reward, just handed it over with a smile and left. What a good Samaritan. She was glowing with gratitude, but my mind was racing. Could it have been Greg's doing? A way to access her phone or track her movements? The timing seemed too perfect to be coincidence. I didn't press the issue, but her story only fueled my anticipation. The truth, whatever it was coming in soon. Greg's call came on a Wednesday morning, cutting through the hum of the construction site like a blade. Mike, he said, his voice steady. I've got the information. Can you meet me today? I agreed, my heart pounding. The rest of the day passed in a blur as I replayed every moment, every conversation with Sarah, trying to prepare myself for whatever Greg had uncovered, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw in his office that evening. Greg handed me a slim pH older as I sat across from him. Take your time, he said, his voice calm but firm. What? Go through it together. Inside were printed photos and a USB drive containing videos and screenshots. My hands shook slightly as I flipped through the images. At first it seemed innocent enough. Sarah and a man I assumed was Ethan sitting at a small cafe table. They were smiling, leaning near each other as if sharing a private joke. The next photo exhibited them at a more upmarket restaurant. This time their hands were clasped across the table, a subtle intimacy that sent a chill through me. And then it was, the incriminating photograph. Sarah and Ethan standing in a crowded city street, his arm around her waist. Our face slanted, approached his as they kissed. The sight hit me like a gut strike. My breath caught, and I had to look away, struggling to process what I was seeing. Mike, Greg stated softly. There's more. He brought out a tablet and opened a folder containing text messages. I managed to get access to her phone. Here are the exchanges between Sarah and Ethan. The words on the screen felt as a hammer to my chest. Ethan, and I can't stop thinking of you. When can I see you again? Sarah, I was missing you as well. So I scanned the conversations. Each communication is another blow to my life. I thought we had arrangements to meet. Compliments, inside jokes, worst of all, expressions of feelings that should have been reserved for me by her spouse. Thoughts spun in all directions at once. How did it come to this? I had given Sarah everything: my love, my support, my money. This was how she opened her cafe. Repaid me, I felt a mix of fury, humiliation, and heartbreak emotions, tangled in a storm that threatened to consume the visuals and messages. Tears seared my eyes, but I couldn't help but blink them away. You cannot afford to break down right now. Okay. Mike Gregg's voice grounded me. I nodded stiffly, swallowing the lump in my throat. Thank you for this, I added in concluding. I needed to know the folder that night. I scarcely slept, and my mind was racing with recollections. Sarah's joy and smile. She had been really excited when the cafe opened. It was difficult to reconcile. I adored the woman in the images. However, the evidence showed that Sarah had. My sadness had betrayed me, hardened into resolve if Sarah wanted to throw away our marriage for Ethan, okay. But I wasn't going to let her take advantage of me any more. I created an appointment with a lawyer as sharp, a divorce lawyer named Rachel Simmons. Her reputation for managing large stakes cases were precisely what I needed. Mr. Hayes, she began with a professional tone, but empathetic. How can I help? I laid out the issue, presenting her the folder Gregg had given me. She went through it. Her expression is providing nothing. According to what you've told me, you're in a strong position, she said after. Currently, this is a no-fail state, but the evidence of infidelity will work for you. Favorable, while discussing the split of, we can argue that her actions, it effectively ended the marriage. About the cafe I requested, I paid for the majority. I did not want her to leave with any of it. Rachel nodded and asked if we could show. You were the primary financial. We can negotiate for a increased portion of marital assets to offset. You'll also want to acquire records, bank statements, receipts, anything that demonstrates your commitment to her calm. The meticulous approach gave me a feeling of I hadn't felt like I had control in weeks. The discussed strategy focuses on reducing Sarah's claims and guaranteeing I could keep the possessions I had worked so hard for. To build, Mike Rachel stated as we wrapped up, I understand this is difficult, but you're doing the right thing earns you a. Driving home after a clean break, I experienced a mix of sorrow and determination on the path ahead. It wouldn't be easy, but I was prepared to tackle. Sarah had made her decisions, and now I was making mine in the following month. I grinned at the strangest moment in my life. When I needed to share meals with Sarah, she even kissed me on the cheek. She left for work every morning. Everything seemed normal, but within I was unraveling, goes over every detail of our life together and wondering how we had reached this stage in actuality, and I was in preparation for the end. I labored attentively, with Rachel gathering financial records, compiling evidence, and finalizing. I even thought about documents for divorce, long and hard about Sarah's cafe, and at the end, I decided to let her keep it. Without my assistance, it would not continue long. Honestly, I wanted as clean a break as possible. Rachel handed me the final folder of papers. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. She offered to have. They served Sarah, but I declined. I told her I will do it. That evening, I sat in the living room with the folder on the coffee table. In front of me, waiting for Sarah to arrive. When she walked in, she felt joyful than she had in weeks. Greeted her with an extremely cheery voice. She laid her purse down and stepped over to me. You appear serious. What's going on? I was waiting for you. I said, my tone even. There's something we need to discuss. Her expression switched from happiness, giving place to anxiety over what it was before. I could speak, and she sat alongside me. She placed her hand on mine. Mike, you know how much I love you. Her voice was gentle, friendly, and I've been considering extending the cafe, maybe adding some new features, which I hate to ask, but I need your aid. It would really Make a. I looked at her, struck by the irony. It's almost too much to endure after everything. Sarah was begging for more money. I began with a calm, yet stern voice. You won't be receiving more money from me. Actually, I need to offer you something. I picked up the packet and handed it to. She furrowed her brow when she opened it. Her eyes were perusing the first page of. The color faded from her face as she read. When I mentioned divorce, she glanced up at me. Mike, your voice is trembling. What is this? What it appears I'm filing for. Divorce, she froze for a moment, shook her head. Divorced, why are you? Speaking of what I did, I took a. I took a deep breath and met Sarah's eyes. I feel like you are cheating on me. Your behavior has changed, and you have become distant. I can't ignore the signs anymore. Eyes widened in shock. Cheating, Mike, how? Could you believe that I would never? Her voice broke, and she clutched folded her chest. I don't know where this comes from, but it is not true. You have to believe me. I shook my head, keeping my voice steady. Sarah, you admitted that it doesn't matter. Marriage is no longer working. These conversations and arguments are better handled in court. She began to. Her sobs became louder as she pleaded with me. Mike, please, I don't know what you think I've done, but this isn't fair. You're my husband. We can work through this. We love each other. I stood, putting some distance between us. I loved you, Sarah, but I can't live like this anymore, feeling like I'm the only one trying to make this work. I've made my decision. Her voice rose hysterical now. You're throwing everything away based on a feeling you don't even have proof. This is insane, Mike. I turned to leave the room, my heart heavy but resolute. If there's nothing to hide, then the truth will come out in court. I walked away, her cries echoing behind me as I closed the door to our bedroom. I let out a long breath. This wasn't how I imagined my marriage would end, but it was the only path left. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face. The courtroom was colder than I'd imagined it would be. The walls were bare, the lighting harsh, and the rows of benches filled with a mix of quiet spectators and legal professionals. Sarah sat a few feet away at her table, her expression a mixture of desperation and resolve. She looked at me often as if trying to find some trace of the man she'd married, someone she could still convince to see reason, but I kept my face neutral, refusing to meet her gaze. For too long, the judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and a non-nonsense demeanor, called the proceedings to order. Sarah's lawyer opened, first framing her as a devoted wife who was blindsided by my decision. Sarah took the stand, her voice trembling as she spoke. Your Honor, she said, glancing between me and the judge, I love my husband and I don't understand why he's doing this. He's been distant, cold, and unwilling to even talk to me. I believe he's going through stuff, and I'm asking for time to save our marriage. We've been together for 8 years. That's not anything you just chuck away. Her request was genuine, and for a little period I felt a pang of guilt. But then Rachel, my lawyer, rose to her feet and began her task. Your Honor, Rachel began, her tone calm and deliberate, whilst my client acknowledges the years he and Mrs. Hayes have spent together. We are here today because that trust has been irreparably destroyed. The evidence we will offer will make plain that Mrs. Hayes has been unfaithful to her husband. The first pieces of evidence, the images of Sarah and Ethan were at the cafe, appears innocent, yet lays. The foundation was laid first, followed by the portraits from the restaurant where the talk became very intimate. Sarah's hands intertwined across the table. Lawyer opposed to calling the eye mages. Mrs. Hay has several clientele. He disagreed with the man who visited her cafe. Ethan is one of them. There is no proof these meetings were anything more than professional. The judge nodded. Rachel continued unaffected. Let's move forward. And the following image smacked like a thunderclap. Sarah and Ethan kissing. oblivious to the world around them. The gasps echoed across the courtroom. Rachel placed the photograph on the screen. Mrs. Hayes, the judge, claimed her tone was stern. Do you have any explanation for this? Sarah hesitated, her composure cracking. It isn't what it seems. Like she said, her voice was wobbly. Ethan is just a buddy, client, or a like-minded. We were caught up in the moment. It was an error, but it did not signify. I tightened my fists underneath the table. Rage surged as she downplayed what had been months of deceit. Rachel pressed to reveal text messages that removed any residual concerns about the messaging, exposed private chats, plans to meet, and shows of affection that Sarah couldn't explain away at the time. Rachel finished. Sarah was pale. With his confidence destroyed, the judge glanced at her with a mixture of sympathy and the judge expressed dissatisfaction in Mrs. Hayes. Her voice is forceful. The proof is plain. Your behaviors constitute infidelity under the law. We shall now proceed to the division of assets. This was where I felt like my preparation paid off. Rachel described my financial situation, contributions to the marriage. Prior to my divorce, I had made precautions to protect my personal assets and decision to willingly quit the cafe. 2. Sarah Mr. Hayes knows that his. Rachel claimed that his wife's cafe was her dream. Has no interest in taking it. Whatever. His substantial financial involvement in. The judge nodded as he established it. Approvingly, Sarah looked astonished as if she couldn't believe what I was saying. Generous, but when Rachel proposed selling the house and dividing the. Sarah's expression clouded. I wanted to keep the house, but Rachel made. It is obvious that such an arrangement wasn't feasible considering her financial situation. The judge found in my favor on everything. My assets were safeguarded. The house would be sold, but Sarah would keep it. Sarah tried the cafe following her trial. Trying to reach me, she called text. Ed even showed up at my office once. Desperate to chat. Mike, I made a mistake, she stated one evening after I answered the phone and didn't realize what I had until I lost it. Please let's start. I couldn't trust the basis of any connection, and Sarah. I informed her that I had wrecked it. Can't trust you anymore, Sarah, I said. You have lied to me for months, and now you expect me to behave like nothing happened. I can't do that, she screamed and pleaded, but I remained solid. The trial was the final chapter in our story, and there was no going back. Selling the house it was a bittersweet experience. Background to 8 years of marriage filled with laughter, love, and memories of. I believed I was living a wonderful life. But as I signed the final paperwork and watched the real estate agent handed Sarah, I had a sense of ownership over a portion of the money. Closing, the home was just a building. Now a locati zero in where something has ended. Sarah poured the money back into her cafe, as I expected, expanded menu, and even employed a couple more employees to try to attract more customers at. Initially, it seemed like things might work. I occasionally drive by and look for her. The cafe is lively throughout the mornings, but the brilliance did not endure long. Over time, the fissures began to appear without my. Sarah struggled with financial support, cover the rising fees she took out, loans to keep things afloat, but just delayed the inevitable reviews. Stated lengthy wait times, inconsistent food quality, and a lack of Sarah's typical charisma. It was obvious she was drowning both financially and emotionally. Ethan was. By that time, I had learned via mutual acquaintances that his availability was a lie. He was married, with children. His wife had discovered the fallout from his romance with Sarah been messy, and Ethan had severed relations with Sarah. Will try and salvage his own. She had gambled on her marriage. I lost everything I should have had with him. Feel vindicated, but instead I felt pity. Sarah's infidelity had devastated our lives. Watching her spiral into debt and loneliness following divorce. It was not something that I enjoyed, just reminded me how precious everything is. Weed Bill had been as for me, I began. I rented a modest flat close by. I moved to the city, started working, and I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen. After years, it seemed strange to be single again. I initially felt as if I had forgotten how to handle life without anyone by my side. But as the months passed, I discovered a rhythm. I made an early decision that I would not rush into another relationship. The wounds of my marriage were still too painful, and I needed time to rediscover who I was outside of being Sarah's married, so I accepted the bachelor lifestyle. Not the wild kind, but a quieter one, where I could focus on myself. I started. On weekends, I slowly but steadily walk. I began rebuilding my life on my terms. Life moves on, and so did I. Perhaps one day, I'll meet someone new, someone who values. I value trust and loyalty just as much, but for now, I am content with the scars from my marriage. Reminds me of the lessons I've learned, and the calm I discovered reminded me I made the correct decision. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a good mood and good luck.